and I am doing a live stream on um, YouTube for the first time. And I was going to make a marketing podcast. I actually posted something on my channel recently, and I thought I would go ahead and just riff about whatever. I don't think anyone's going to show up, but I thought this would be kind of cool because, I like selling stuff. This is what I do for a living. I market stuff online, and I just love everything about selling stuff on in general. I want to build a big company. I am building a big company. I'm part of it, I want to be able to just grow. I don't know what you're doing out there. I like YouTube. YouTube is like one of my favorite mediums that there are. And if I can find a way to sort of connect the people that want to watch this kind of content, I'm pretty stoked. So hopefully you can hear me. I didn't really, oops, I turned off. Yeah, I didn't really test this, but I got my iPhone here and I got like some notes, some stuff I can talk about. I think what I'm going to talk about is I got some of the stuff that I've listened to today already. And that the thing that I listened to today is the Tim Ferriss podcast. If you're familiar with the 4-hour work week, a lot of some of my time management is really built from that. And what I like about that so much is that essentially one of the biggest things I got from the 4-hour work week was learning how to batch. And what I mean batch is like learning how to take 80-20 rule is number one, and then batching. So where am I going with this? I'm going with trying to get the most out of your life so that you get the best results you can possibly can. And I do that by reading a ton of different materials. God, I just wish I had something to talk about. I just actually just hit record or hit live. And I just want to see how awkward this would be. It does feel a little awkward. You know, it's funny. If I put this on Facebook, I would feel much more embarrassed because there's more engagement there and the audience is different. Whereas on YouTube is different. So I almost feel they're sort of segregated for me as far as the people that I follow and connect with. There's a certain kind of anonymity with YouTube. Not really, I guess, but it just feels that way. And now I have to deal with the awkward silence. I guess speaking about awkward silence, I listened to this podcast. It's on the Jordan Harbinger show about negotiation. And for the longest time, I used to be the most afraid to negotiate. And truth be told, I am still pretty afraid of negotiating. It's one of the things that I don't like to do because something about engaging with someone and then having to lower their price, I feel like you're offending another person. And that's the thing about business, especially when it comes to like face-to-face conversations and sales and high stakes. Like if you're in the big leagues doing big business deals, like for example, real estate or stuff like that, what you're going to find is that it's essentially the one that loses their cool is the one that's going to lose, or it's going to slip up and make a bad decision. In lots of ways, negotiations is like asking a girl for the number. It's like asking for something from someone that you need, right? And you need them to say yes, or you want them to say yes. And it's in that situation that you discover kind of all your flaws, all your mistakes. It heightens a lot of your awkwardness about yourself. And when you find out that when the pressure is on and the lights are on and you're having to ask a girl for their number, or nothing like talking to like, what do you call it? See, like I was going to say, I don't know what I was saying, because then I saw Jesse here make a comment. It says it takes two people to make a conversation awkward. One person is usually speaking and the other is listening. When there's nothing to say or listen to, this becomes awkward. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. What's up, Jesse? What was I talking? Negotiating. I was talking about negotiating. That's right. Actually, I do. I got a good story. I had a situation where I had a job offer, or I was waiting for a job offer, and I was really worried about it because I was making a really good income. And what happened was my income was going too high. I was making too much money, and to their respect, it was kind of high because I was on a percentage. And because it was a freelance position and I was sort of in business for myself, we grew this business kind of big, and I was getting too big of a chunk. And they had to lower it, and that hurt a lot. And one part of me wanted to, actually, I was pretty resentful about it. But the thing was, like the opportunity that I got to do this online marketing thing, like literally changed my life in such a ridiculous way. So I didn't want to bite the hand that feeds me. And I was not, the truth is, I wasn't mature enough in being able to deal with the conversation. Like, there's a saying, like, you want to be open and you want to be honest. Honesty is the best policy. But the fact of the matter is, it's you can't help but feel that when you say something or when you're open about something, that someone's going to judge you. And of course they're going to judge you. But the problem is, because I was so insecure, and I am so insecure about this type of thing, that I didn't want to show weakness. Right. And in lots of ways, it's okay to show weakness. But the problem was, see, this is the problem. Like this is what makes it so hard to build a company and build a business, or being in a relationship for that matter, is that as much as that we want each other to be open with one another, we can't help but feel open to we feel exposed when we met a mistake or we need to ask for help. And that's kind of one of the hardest things that I sort of learned. And anyways, what ended up happening is I got a job offer. I got an offer. It wasn't the offer. I wanted more money, to be totally honest. And I wanted more, but the reality is I got an amazing opportunity that's it's in the long run, it's worth so much more to me. And the point is I'm bringing this up because I'm still a child. I'm just big. I'm just this big baby, right? And I admit this because what I find myself doing is that it's part of what I'm talking about. This is what YouTube is for me. This therapy. It's being able to admit your mistakes, right? Which I think we all can admit our mistakes, but we have to admit our mistakes to someone that we don't want to admit our mistake to, right? Or feel like there's a possibility of repercussion to admitting your mistake. Because often, almost always, when you admit your mistake from the very beginning, you will benefit significantly more. But the problem is, even though logically you may know this when you admit your mistake or you fess up or you just kind of own up to your own accountability for whatever you have to do, because the problem is when you say, oh, it was my fault. Oh, you know what? I should have done this instead. What's so funny about that? It's you expose yourself. It's almost like you're already on the ground, or you're already hurt, or you already are scarred. So the other person is not going to kick you. Hopefully, they usually won't, because it's like kick them while they're down. They're usually going to see that you're being vulnerable, and this has to be genuine, but they'll see that you're being vulnerable about yourself, and what happens is they'll be like, oh, it's okay. But the problem is you actually have to be vulnerable. It's almost like you have to be ready, like, here, go ahead, hit me in the face, and hope that they don't hit you in the face. And so the feeling of exposing yourself before getting punched. So anyways, like I recently, not a while ago, I was working with a client, actually just yesterday. And we had some issues with customer service. And the problem was they weren't, the services that we were promoting, they weren't getting serviced properly. It's kind of vague, I know. But the thing was, what happened was, I wanted to explain to them that if we don't promote these offers, they're not going to make as much revenue, and it's to their detriment if we don't do it the way. Basically, I was being defensive. That's sort of what happened. But instead of being defensive, and instead of what's that word? Instead of being defensive, and instead of trying to explain myself, I just said, "Hey, I'm sorry about the situation. Let me go and fix this." I mean, because the funny part about saying that is that that's what's going to end up happening anyway, except without the defensiveness of the front, because usually I'll go, okay, well, we have to do this. We have to do this. We have to do this. I'm sorry. And instead of having to explain myself about why we had to do these things, I just said, sorry, own up, and then fix the problem. And often I'm part of the reason why I'm talking about this is because there's a thing that you need to do, the thing that you should do. And then there's a thing that you want to do, right? This is actually a lot of what causes problems with all communications and conversations, whether it be with a manager and an employee, or same level managers and business relationships, is that nobody wants to admit their mistake. Nobody wants to own up to the situation. And what makes this so hard? Hey, I'm making a video. No, out. No one wants to admit to their mistake, but the most powerful thing, the most advantageous thing to do is to make yourself open and be vulnerable when something does get screwed up. You know, and again, going back to my story about the job offer that I got, and having this situation with freelance, I needed a lot of help and I didn't know how to ask for it, or I was afraid to ask for it. And often the best decision is honesty. But see, this is why I don't. This is the part where I see. There's this thing that I can't even explain. That's what makes this so difficult. It's the fact that you want to be honest, but then you don't want to be too honest, right? Like you'll be honest, like okay, you'll take ownership over something, but you don't necessarily have to throw yourself under the bus and like make yourself look worse than you are. You know, you just own up. You just own up to the situation, and then you just go ahead and just, and fix it. It's like, okay, what can we do to move forward? Right. Cause one of my biggest problems before, what I used to do when I have to own up to the situation, I would just bury myself. Right. And the reason why I bring this up is because in management, when I worked for 24 Hour Fitness for a long time, I did not know how to communicate well. And I had a very poor communication. I was very direct. I was very brash. And what happened was I was so sure of myself. I had lots of confidence. I did very well. But the problem is when someone from up above, higher management, like district manager or something like that, can't come down, or how about this, a scary district manager? That's more specific, because my district manager, for whatever reason, I was cool with, but then when it came to like someone higher up, not even maybe not higher up, just someone that I kind of was afraid of or intimidated by, she would come talk to me, and she just here's the thing: there's some people that just have this like confidence and this just power about them, and these are the types that if you show any weakness, they'll crush you, right? And that's kind of what happened. Where am I going with this? I'm actually trying to articulate what it means to you want to admit your mistakes, but you still have to watch your back, right? And that's sort of, it's like a catch-22. I don't even know how to explain it, but anyway, I was supposed to talk about marketing, but I told myself I would do 10 minutes of live stream on YouTube, and I talked about a bunch of other random things. The cool thing I like about this though is I get this huge amount of like adrenaline rush. Like I'm starting to sweat. I start to feel like awkward. It's just so weird. Says, oh, here, Jesse. I live my life in management and by making sure I answer correct questions, not answering questions correctly. Most of the time, the answer is simple. That's a good one right there. I live my life in management by making sure I answer the correct question. What's so cool about that statement is, and not answering questions correctly, is because I feel like with the second one, answering questions correctly, I feel like I have to answer every single question. And that's sort of the mistake, right? You answer the question incorrect. You keep answering all the questions. You don't have to answer all the questions. I mean, the way I read your question was like, I felt like I needed to have an answer for everything. And the way I read the first part of your statement was, I live my life and management by making sure I answer correct questions, which means that you don't have to answer questions that you don't have to give answers to questions that you don't want to or don't make any sense, and especially in regards to the problem you're trying to solve or whatever you're doing for your customers or whatever or whatnot. So. And that's what my problem is with management. I felt like I had to have an answer for everything. I felt like that I had to, what was that word? I had to do this. I had to show them proof, right? I had to show them proof like, hey, this is why we did this thing. Like I always felt like, and with the problem is when you try to show proof and you try to, when you try to like essentially show like step by step, like this is what happened, this is why we did what we did. What ends up happening is you over explain, I over explain, and often it comes off very defensive, and you looked upon negatively, and that's really what I mean. And I find that's not a good thing to do. But anyways, I have to get ready for dinner. But this is pretty cool. I'll do more of these as I go. I'm going to do this as a video podcast. I mean, a podcast. I don't know what I'm going to call it. But anyways, thanks for hanging out with me, Jesse. Hope you're doing well over there, buddy. You have a good one. My one.